Board games. Monopoly, Sorry, Uno, Clue. While these all may sound like relics of your past, the connections made through these types of experiences are timeless, and they're also a huge part of Nathan and I's life. Interacting with the physical components of board games with other people not only has societal benefits, like building community and connection through strong relationships, board games also have health benefits as well. They often require memorizing elements or patterns and using propositional logic and deductive reasoning and reading body language and interpreting meaning through verbal and nonverbal communication. When we process all these things, it's very beneficial for the hippocampal region of the brain, as well as the prefrontal brain cortex, and as we all know, these are the areas of the brain involved in complex mental processes and memory formation.
Over the last few years, there have been several studies that have been conducted of the effect that regularly engaging with physical board games has on the mind and the body. In Southwest France, a group of researchers got together and they studied 3,675 participants over the span of about 20 years. And what they found was pretty interesting, that people who were regularly playing board games in groups were about 15% less likely to suffer from dementia. It's crazy. Now, I can tell you personally that there are very few feelings in this world that match the thrill of putting down that final winning board gaming piece, whether you do so confidently or if you're like me and you hate conflict with a healthy dose of guilt after a long, fat battle at the table. But when we talk about board games being this tactile connection point, it can feel different to many of us, especially in today's more digitally focused culture, if not completely foreign. When we're all only a single text message removed at any given time, board games can feel kind of like this intimidating investment because they're inviting us into something that's just altogether deeper.
Yeah, that sort of reminds me of when this weird digital era was really ushered in my opinion. June 29th, 2007. You know where you were? I do. Scott Knutson, my buddy, and I were camped outside the corporate Joplin AT&T store, for on that day, the iPhone was released. There we are, heeding the call. Scott and I were in line for 26 hours, which means we were out there the day before while everyone coming in and shopping looked at us like a couple of maniacs. Camping out for a product at that time was pretty weird, especially in a smaller town like Joplin, but there we were, and once night fell, we were looking for ways to keep ourselves entertained, and I was in public doing something I'll never be caught doing again if I can help it. Playing Risk. I know. As a board game enthusiast, I should be paying homage to the elders of the hobby, but Risk is a slog, and it can honestly feel like a chore to play sometimes, but play it we did. And I actually remember that night it was raining a little bit, and this AT&T store was one of those with that plastic bubble overhang on the side. And it wasn't a ton of cover, but we did our best to stay out of the elements. And every time some rain would drip off onto the board, actually, we would declare that section of the map flooded, and you'd have to evacuate your forces from that area. It was a lot of fun. And reflecting on that story years later, that's certainly the part I have the most fond memories about. Long after the elation of, unboxing my iPhone had worn off, I'm cherishing those fun, goofy memories of playing Risk with Scott,
Honestly, though, there are a lot of reasons why board games are always considered to be this connective touchstone like Jake's talking about here. I mean, they take forever to set up. They can take forever to learn. A lot of them are super expensive. And whether we realize it or not, many of us are bringing board game baggage with us every time we get together around the table. Now, I'm willing to bet that most of you have a memory, at least one memory, of playing a board game from when you were younger. Now, for some of you, those might be great memories. Maybe your family got together to play spades every Friday night, rain or shine, and even though time and distance has separated you guys at this point in life, you still get together when you can and you whip out that same old deck of cards. Or maybe there's some obscure board game that you can't really remember the name of and you probably weren't playing it correctly, but you have fond memories of trying to decipher exactly what you're supposed to do with your little sister. But for more of you, I would guess that there are more negative board game memories that come to your mind. I, for one, think it is the unifying trial and tribulation of all mankind to have that 6-hour Monopoly game that somehow you still did not finish. And I think that it's the source of our resentment towards our collective fathers. Or maybe it was that weird German card game that your chain-smoking grandmother used to force you to play when you go over there for a week in the summer. And she used to make you play over and over again until her sick appetite had finally been sated. Or maybe you got memories you don't feel strongly about. Either way. But we all bring baggage to the table, and we all bring expectations. And the expectations have to do with what we think is possible in this tabletop space. Roll and move, victory by random chance, flimsy paper money. These are evils that we have all fallen to, and the list goes on. But I am happy to tell you that the board game scene has by no means been standing still since the dark days of our youth. In the last decade alone, board game design and production and distribution has grown leaps and bounds. And with that resurgence of interest, board game designers have been able to do some very cool things in the space, meaning that there's something out there for literally everybody. If you're like me, for example, and you've always dreamed of standing under the angry rays of the hot desert sun as you scream at camels as they leapfrog each other around a racetrack while a flimsy pop-up palm tree sways in the distance. They got a game for us now, y'all. Camel up.
Camel up. If you've had that common fantasy of inhabiting Bill Murray from Groundhog Day, but in the body of an ancient Egyptian pharaoh who's trying to prevent a cataclysmic event from ripping apart space and time, and when you fail, your boss just yells at you before throwing you back into the field, there's a game for that too. Time Stories.
And who among us hasn't wanted to just kick it around a table with a bunch of our fellow psychics as we try and read each other's mind and say the same word at the same time? There's Medium.
Medium. Yeah, Medium is actually one of the most popular party games at the moment, and party is a genre that a lot of people have had some exposure to. Anything from Taboo to Cards Against Humanity. Party games are often games for larger groups of people with simple rules and a lighter, breezier tone. Now, because of this, there are board game snobs out there who look down on party games, calling them simple and stupid, but as a recovering board game snob, I can tell you to pay those people no mind. Party games do something that no other board game does, something that is intrinsically linked to the connection that only board games can bring. They create an environment for people to start to set down their inhibitions and their insecurities and simply have fun. At our pop-up board game events, party games easily get the most play, and they create the energy that we like to see while removing the barriers that we don't. And these are great for casual social environments because the nature of most party games is that they're built with a big group mentality. And this allows players to be as interactive as they want to be in a setting where they might not know everybody present and aren't 100% comfortable being silly or serious around people they don't know. And that gives them this natural built-in anonymity. So they're great for big groups and mixed friends. They're often simple enough that everyone can get on the same page very quickly, so no one's bogged down with lots of rules and nuance. And though games like this usually do boil down to the funniest answer wins, everyone has a chance to do well, and if they don't, they can just blame the cards that they had in their hand. I know we've all been there. So there really is a party game for everybody. If you love trivia games, Linky is one of the most innovative twists on trivia games I've played in a long time.
Yeah, it's really good. If you like apples to apples, but you feel like the design's been copied one too many times, Dixit is a really good subjective take on that design.
Yeah, and if you love word association party games, So Clover, always a favorite every time it gets played.
Yeah. Next, we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to talk about strategy games, which is a blanket term we're going to be using to talk about games that go a little bit deeper. Now, typically speaking, strategy games are going to go somewhere between 2 and 5 players, and they're going to run an hour to upwards of 4+ for some of the crunchier ones. Now, if party games are designed to have us set down our inhibitions and come together around the table in common, then strategy games are actually more intimate than that. To work, strategy games ask each of us to come to the table with the same level of commitment. And commitment means the same thing that it means anywhere else, that good or bad, up or down, whether I'm winning or whether I'm losing, I'm going to take this game seriously and I'm going to stay here until it's done. Now, this can make us feel vulnerable because when you inevitably mess up and make the dumbest move that you possibly could have, it's revealing and embarrassing and hilarious and intimate all at the same time. Strategy games make this trick work by sort of asking each player to sign this silent social contract. And that contract states that I'm seeing what the game is asking me to do, and given my purview of that and the resources at my disposal, I'm going to try my best to do that. Now, for some of you, that might create this feeling of anxiety that's not present in even the most raucous big group games because there's no two ways about it. You're trying to win, and to do that, everyone else is going to lose. And they're only going to lose because you manipulated what was at your disposal more efficiently and more effectively. But I can also tell you from personal experience that whenever you are able to give yourself to a design like that, when 2 or more brains meet to clash over the table and burn over cardboard and tokens. It really is intimate. And there are very few experiences in life that can create a connection point like just going all out against your opponent. And there are so many good strategy games.
Yeah, and if you love strategy games, but you hate waiting around for your turn, Space Base actually rewards you during other players' turns. It's a personal favorite. It's a great box.
Yeah, that's good. If you like the brain burn feeling I was talking about, but you don't like as much direct conflict, I can't recommend Wingspan enough. It's really good.
And on the other end of that, sort of, they go as deep as you want, strategy games do, all the way to Blood Rage, which is actually so competition heavy, hence the name, that it actually forces you into conflict at times. So, yeah.
Now, games like this might sound awesome to a lot of you in the room, but if I could, I would like to speak to a subset group of you, maybe people that are more like me, who do their primary gaming with somebody that they live with. And we know this person is such a blessing, and they're so kind, and they're so generous, and they're so thoughtful, and they make us better people until they've been slighted in a board game, and then their true form emerges like some sort of creature from the pit. Now, to those people, my people, we know that oftentimes direct conflict games like he was just talking about are completely off the table. So enter cooperative games. Cooperative games are the perfect remedy for board game nights gone wrong. Most of the time, they're actually still pretty new, so a lot of the time, people don't actually even know that they exist. So it's always exciting when you get to be the one to introduce them to your group of friends, because they'll inevitably be as excited as you are. Nobody has to be the bad guy anymore, because now the board game's the bad guy.
It's the board game's fault now. Yeah. So during co-op games, team dynamics quickly take shape, with some players becoming the decision maker and some players just going rogue and doing what they think is best, regardless of the team's decision. In a way, you still have autonomy over your own turn and your own decisions, but you're always under the umbrella of a team now. And that creates this freedom of failure in a weird way, where if you go off on your own and fail, you have to answer to everyone else at the table, sure, but everyone else at the table is your teammate now, and they'll try to pick up the slack when you make a boneheaded move. And then, of course, there always is the chance that you succeed if you go off on your own, and then you get to say, I told you so, and who doesn't love that? So.
Now, being part of a team teaches us to interact and connect in a more balanced way. And in the best designed cooperative games, you still get to go all out, but no human being has to be on the receiving end of your brilliant intellect. Now the entire team gets to rally against the true evil this world has to offer, which is a deck of cards or an app or a bag of tokens. In the best played cooperative games, they're almost always going to come down to the wire, with you guys just barely taking the loss or just managing to scoop the victory from the jaws of defeat.
Yeah, and that's great, and that's fun. A lot of excitement, a lot of suspense when that happens, but that doesn't always happen, for sure. One time we were playing this co-op strategy game called Nemesis with our wives, and so the story of Nemesis basically is that you're space travelers, your ship's broken, you have to fix it so you can get back to Earth. So we were playing, taking some turns, and a few small fires had broken out throughout our ship, but it was our first time playing, so we were all collectively sort of like, no big deal.
Yeah.
Well, we drew a couple of bad cards during the game's turn, and one of those cards said, all existing fires spread to all adjacent rooms, which essentially meant that our 3 little tiny contained fires instantly turned into 15 tiny fires, and our ship exploded immediately. So we spent the 20, 30 minutes before that setting up the game, and then another 30 minutes trying to learn the rules, and just like that, ship's on fire, the game's over. And sure, it was frustrating for sure, but looking back, it also has become sort of hilarious in a weird way, because co-op means that we're all sharing in this experience together. It's this weird kinship of suffering that we all sort of share now, and we all kind of have PTSD with Nemesis, because you never know like what terrible cards you might draw during the game's turn.
Yeah, most cooperative games, like Jake's saying here, are going to seem impossible on your first time through, but the more you play it, especially with the same group of people, the more the design begins to open itself up to you, and what seemed impossible on your initial go-through is going to seem totally manageable by your third time.
Yeah, and if you love the idea of banding together against an inanimate board game, if that sounds fun, maybe try Paleo. It absolutely has no right being as fun as it is, and it's actually right over here.
Yeah, and they're not all in big boxes like that either. The crew manages to create this compelling cooperative experience with just a tiny deck of cards.
Yeah, and some co-op games give each player unique individual roles, and if that sounds fun to you, you want to work together to take down iconic monsters, Horrified is a great option as well. In today's digital age, it's important to remember the connections that can be made when you interact in person face-to-face with another group of people. And whether that's in a big, casual setting with a goofy party game, or a 4-hour marathon of Risk or Scythe, or getting your buds together and just trying to defeat the mechanics of a well-made co-op game. There really is a game and a connection out there for anybody.
Yeah. One of the things we love doing is introducing this hobby to people, and we love removing as many barriers as we possibly can from players, so that's one of the things we want to try and do today. These 3 games that we've got over here on the table, we're actually going to be giving those away. Each of you guys should have gotten a raffle ticket when you came in. After the talks are done, if you guys just want to go out and compare your ticket to the one on the back of the game, if they match up, the person out there will give you the game and you can take it home. We think that these tactile connection points that come from board games are so important, and we hope that you all leave with a refreshed purview of what's possible in the tabletop space and the powerful connection points that come from board games. Thank you.
Thank you.